Well, there are many not here today because of the retreat at Lake Whitney Ranch and similar. We have Gloria that's watching us online, and I've been told to wave. You can see the ladies waving here. So hi, Gloria. We do miss Gloria. We do miss a lot of other folks that are not here. If you know of people that should be here, let us know. We can touch base. Some have made a decision, and we want to respect them, but we also want to make sure that they feel reached out to and loved and cared for, and I think we can all step up a little bit there. I want to talk this morning about the way forward. And I know that in going forward, we sometimes have to look at the sides. So I want to talk a little bit about balance for a start. Did you know that every 10 minutes here in America, 200 people become disabled by accidents? And I wonder if I should ask you if you could figure out what kind of accidents would cause this disability. I will tell you, start off with, it's not vehicles. It's not by things that happen on the highways. It is things that are happening in our home, where we dwell, our spot of safety. We are at far more risk to get disabled in our home than we are driving on the Autobahn in Germany. And Elder Nancy knows all about that. But you, on the other hand, I believe will walk again freely soon. The big villains in our home are not chainsaws or lawnmowers. The worst dangers in our home by far are stairways, steps, and ladders. Since when you see guys like me trying to replace something up there, that's when I take 3 ladders on top of each other and duct tape them together. And when they start bending and creaking, I'm like, I can do it if I move quickly. And that is why my wife insists that we have extra life insurance. That's why all wives insist on that, because we think we know what we're doing. It's the kind of thing that I think I know, and then when I say I will look at it, my wife will say, no, let's just call somebody, But dangerous. Balance is critical. When you lose your balance, everything, well, no, not everything, nothing matters. Because once you're off balance, you're done. When I teach martial arts, I tell people all the time, you need to make sure that you are balanced. Make sure that your center of gravity is taken care of. Before you think about punching or blocking, make sure that you've got yourself grounded, balanced. Your center is your center. Yeah. Yes. But don't salute me. I'm not in uniform, and I'm not. But thank you for at least acknowledging me. Watch your balance. As I'm looking at the situation that's unfolding in this country, not just politically, and that in itself will warrant several series worth of sermons, but as I'm looking at what's happening in our denomination, if any of you watched what has been happening in the North American division over the last few weeks, what has happened at the General Conference fall session that has just recently concluded, and I spoke to our conference president, our Texas conference president this week when I was up at the conference, and he said for the first time he left our denominational meetings having felt that it wasn't God leading the meetings. He said it absolutely, and maybe I shouldn't say this while we're on live stream, but he said it in public, so I'm going to quote him. But he said it broke his heart when he saw conference presidents walking by each other, refusing to acknowledge the other because the other person believed in a different take or a different view or a different stance. When people who are representing conferences, you and me, are so frustrated with a situation that they refuse to acknowledge a fellow son or daughter of God. When we have to be careful about our balance, our physical balance in our homes, shouldn't we even be more concerned about our balance spiritually? We can fall and have to walk around with a scooter, but it gets better eventually. But when we fall spiritually, it is very difficult to get back up. It is very difficult to recover from it. We lose our spiritual balance when we take our eyes off of Jesus. It's amazing how just stepping on a Lego block at 12 o'clock at night or in the morning, which I guess, will make you step in ways you never thought you could step. You could become a ninja by walking through a spider web at 3 o'clock in the morning. But you could also fall like you've never learned to walk if you take a wrong step. Our scripture reading this morning, as we read from Proverbs 4, starting in verse 25, says this: "Let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil." That's pretty good advice. We need to stay in the heart of the message. Do not veer from the path. Do not veer from a single kernel of truth, because deep ditches wait for you on either side. You know, I noticed when we lived in Roanoke, there was this tendency to have certain roads that have these deep ditches along the road. And it kind of freaked me out when it would start snowing and you could feel your car skidding out a little bit and you saw these deep ditches. But I've noticed that even here in Texas, unless you have a 4x4 vehicle, there are some areas that when you come around the corner too fast, you're going to have to call a tow truck. Christians must avoid the deep ditches of death and deception. I want to have to go through several warnings because I feel and I believe that I can say with confidence that we are very near the last day. I believe we are in the last days. I think Jesus' coming is imminent. And we need to take precautions. We need to make sure. And I want to look at some of these warnings. We're looking at Matthew 24, verse 24, as we start off with some of these warnings. It says, "For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect." You know, when you read this, you think, well, I'm not going to be deceived. I was raised in the church. I know right from wrong. But it's amazing when I look at the situation that is unfolding, again, like I said, in this country politically, but also in the church politically. And when I say the church, I'm not talking about Stonehill per se. I'm talking about a denomination. I'm talking about the Christian movement, even, for that matter. But it's been amazing to see lately, as things have become very polar, how people who once said that they would not be swayed in any way, shape, or form will stand up and even use language that no Christian should use, but these are people in leadership, as they take a stance for a specific issue instead of saying, what does Jesus want? Jesus warns us that in these very last days, just prior to the second coming, we will see and start to see great deception come into the church, and not just at certain levels. I'm not talking about the conspiracy theories of Jesuits infiltrating the church. Oh my goodness. I'm talking about church leaders, pastors, people like you and me, taking our eyes off of Jesus and sending the people around us in the wrong direction. These will be so powerful that if it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived. This week, 2 pastor acquaintances of mine that are in the forefront of the top 5 pastors being asked to speak around the world. Both of them resigned the ministry. And I'm not going to mention the names. You just do a Facebook search and you'll be stunned. People that drew thousands of youth at rallies and seminars around the world resigned because they said they cannot believe that there truly is a God anymore. And it scares me that people that took leadership, people that were in the forefront, people with 2 or 3 doctorates behind their name, can suddenly turn around and say, you know what, I don't actually believe there is a God. And what does it do to the young people that followed them almost religiously, which is also a problem. Don't ever religiously follow a leader unless it is Jesus Christ himself. Because it's taught me more and more, as Paul has rightly said, we are all sinners saved by grace. And even us pastors, I would like to go out as far as to say that I think we are being tempted more than you are. Because the devil is looking to discredit those who are in leadership so that you will say, well, if they can't even do it, what hope is there for me? Not that I want to elevate myself spiritually, but I remember what it was like as a kid when I saw pastors having affairs or pastors being accused. I'm like, if they, how can I? We've got Adventist celebrities. Adventist pastors that are on TV all the time. Be careful. I'm not saying they're going to stumble, but if they stumble and you follow them as religiously as some of us do, you're going to be so disillusioned that you're going to lose sight of the fact that it is not him, but Christ who saves you. So in the last days, there are going to be great deceptions. In the political arena, in the church setting, people are going to say things that others will prove as lies, and others will just blindly follow them because they're our leaders. This thought is amplified somewhere when we look at the spirit of prophecy. I want to read to you there from Selected Messages, Volume 2, page 16. And she says, fanaticism will appear in the very midst of us. Deception will come and be of such a character that if it were possible, they would mislead the very elect. This is almost word for word what we just read in Matthew 24, but there's an extra word that she starts off with here. She says, fanaticism. Fanaticism. As it was in the very beginning of our denomination, so it will be again at the end. Just after the Great Disappointment in 1844, there were over 40 areas within the United States that were where fanaticism had to be dealt with severe discipline by the early Adventist leaders. She continues, she says, I was instructed that fanaticism would come again among us in the closing days of our message. Now I'm putting things together here just a little bit. I'm building a case or a scenario for you to work with here as far as looking at a denomination. Fanaticism came at the very last days. Fanaticism will come again at the very last days as it was in the beginning of our denomination. Jesus says in Matthew 24, people will be deceived, if possible, even the very elect. It means our leaders, those that we look up to, the ones that we go to and we say, we don't understand, can you explain this to us? They are going to be the ones that say, I don't know if I believe this anymore. You remember a few years back, the pastor at the Hollywood Seventh-day Adventist Church said, I'm going to challenge God. I'm going to, for a year, live as an atheist. I'm not going to pray one lick and see if God changes my mind. And after a year, he said, I didn't hear a single word from God. And he resigned the ministry. He resigned membership within the Seventh-day Adventist Church and became an atheist and now sells beer. He's a rep for a homebrew company in California. Man with a doctorate, man who brought many other people to Christ. But when we take our eyes off Christ, even when we willingly say, I'm going to experiment with God, I'm going to ignore him for a year and see if I hear him. I would like to do an experiment today. I'm not going to look at my wife or talk to my wife or tell her for the next year that I love her. And then I hope to be convinced that she is still my wife at the end thereof. I mean, how ludicrous is that? And we tried to do that with Jesus Christ himself. When you willingly take a step back and say, I'm going to pretend you're not there. Well, guess what? He's not going to be there. Because you have willingly built up a wall. It's like kids in a class who are so distracted. You have to come and say, I'm going to build a little cubicle on your desk so that you don't get distracted by what's happening around you. You're saying spiritually, I'm going to see if I can hide behind this box and not hear Christ. Well, guess what? You're not going to hear him. Are you a fanatic? Do you know a fanatic? Think of somebody that is a fanatic in your mind. Can you think of at least one? There should be at least one that you can think of. And I'm not just talking in the Adventist church. I'm just talking about period. Somebody who's fanatical. Now I want you to think of what that looks like. Are they balanced? You were smiling, but now you're not smiling anymore. Are they balanced? Are they balanced in their walk with Christ? Or are they way out there in the boonies? No, you don't know anymore now. Smiles are all gone. A fanatic is usually somebody that carries a heavy, giant chip on their shoulder, so heavy that it causes them to lose balance. Can you think of a fanatic now? Think of your walk with Christ over the last 10 years or so. They're always right. No matter what the Sabbath school teacher says, they know better. Even if you open the Bible and show them, it's a translation error. I know better. I believe that these people, even if Jesus Christ himself came down and made himself manifest before them and said, thus says the Lord, they would say, I have it on higher authority. There are some that just, you cannot argue with them. Even if you prove to them what they believe is truth. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. And we see this not just in government, we see this in the church, we see this in our local environment. And it scares me when we see those kind of situations manifest themselves. Deuteronomy 5, there's a list of the 10 commandments. And then after the 10 commandments, God gives us a warning. It's God's instruction. God says in verse 32, you shall be careful, therefore, to do as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. He warns us, stay in the middle. You've ever flown in an airplane? You sit in a 747 coming in for landing. Don't you just appreciate it when the pilot does not veer to the left or to the right? When he stays on course, straight down the middle, the way he's supposed to, the way he was trained, the way he was instructed by the flight commandments. You appreciate it. I have been in flights where I have literally been lifted out of my seat and hit the roof because I wasn't strapped in and we hit turbulence. And the pilot had to fly through that. I literally pulled a Pope stunt where I climbed down the stairs and kissed the tarmac because I was so happy that I made it to Mother Earth. I appreciate when the pilot can stay down the middle and take me home. The only way to stay in the middle of the line of safety is to stay in the middle on the line of safety. Jesus Christ is the middle of our message. Jesus is the flight path. Jesus is the way. Jesus is the truth. Jesus is the life. Do not don't veer off the flight path. Allow me to share with you a true experience of one of the first situations I dealt with in this country. There was a lady that after a campaign that I was the evangelist for, surrendered her life to God and was baptized up in Michigan. She became very zealous for God. This is a lady who, even during the studies, invited me into her home, treated me with maple candy that she had made herself, made me a beef sandwich that was to die for. I guess I shouldn't say that from the pulpit. Yeah, that line's crossed now, a little bit off to the side. Back to the middle. Okay. Okay. See how easy it is? Okay. But this lady started studying, and she got her hands on the books, Counsels and Diets and Foods. Wonderful books, wonderful information. And as she started reading this, she decided that it would be better for her to give up eating meat. I can respect that. I mean, let's face it, it is healthier. And she refused to cook meat in the house. The husband wasn't too keen on that because he was born with a T-bone in his hand. You know, it was very difficult for him to come to terms with that. But she read this and she avoided cooking meat. I mean, it came to the point where she avoided any dairy products whatsoever. I mean, nothing. Nothing that looked like it could have had any animal connection anywhere along the line. If it was in a bottle on a wagon that was drawn by an ox, it was taboo. Nothing near an animal. She became so legalistic on this that she would outrightly walk into restaurants and slap food off of the plates of people onto the floor because she would tell them, "Do you know what a sin it is to eat that?" She began to wear long, dark dresses. She started drinking herbs every meal. About 6 months after the campaign, I was back up there to do a follow-up. We went to go and visit her, and we found about 50 bottles of herbs on the dining room table that she consumed during every single meal. And I'm not exaggerating, it was probably almost 60. Bottle after bottle after bottle, and each one had to be consumed before a meal. And she came to the point, and I was the one that brought her to the gospel, with her telling me what a sinner I was. Well, there was no lie there. But while we were talking, I asked her if she had seen a certain video of a certain pastor who did a presentation. And before I could finish, she got up, she stormed out, she went to the garage, she came back with an axe, and she started chopping up her TV in front of us, shocked as we were. I started fearing for my life, thinking that I was after the television set. Several members talked to her, told her to slow down, to understand that even Jesus would do things within moderation. They even brought up the argument that Jesus ate fish, where she banged on the table and said, "But Jesus is not God." A year later, people started sending me photos of this lady who was now very pale, very anemic. Her husband had left her. She finally stopped attending church because there were just too many sinners in church. I can't worship with those people. I cannot find God when I sit with people who are sinners and who eat beef. Sinners. Very critical. Today she has dropped out. She wants nothing to do with the Seventh-day Adventist Church because we have all missed the true gospel. So when I say, do you know someone who's fanatical? Do you know someone who's a fanatic? A fanatic is someone who redoubles his efforts after he loses sight of the real true goal. Acts 19:32 says, now some cried out one thing, some another, for the assembly was in confusion, and most of them did not know why they had come together. Fanatics forget the essence of the message. They just simply want to prove to everybody else that they are right. And again, I'm not just talking about the church, I'm talking about government, I'm talking about every avenue of life. We've got to be careful. We've got to be careful. We must stick to the heart of the message and not go out on a limb too far. It's very easy to climb into a big tree and sit on a limb right where it comes out of the trunk of the tree. But with the further you go out, the easier it is to be shaken out of that tree. Let me illustrate this. There are three choices, and I'm using health since I brought it up here. Three choices that you and I have to look at health. Number one, forget the health message. Eat what you want. Enjoy life to the full. While you're at it, go and have a drink. I wouldn't encourage you to smoke a cigarette because that is just plain dumb any ways we look at it. But the rest, just enjoy life. Option number one. Oh, by the way, by option one, you're going to end up dying because of your lifestyle too. Seriously, you eat a brisket sandwich every day of your life, see how long you live. No, seriously, let me know. I would like to know. No, forget that. Pray for me. Pray for me. Point number two, become a health fanatic. When the Natural Pill magazine comes in, which you subscribe to religiously, order one of everything just to be safe. That will supplement your vegan diet to the max. Anything that is green, you should at least try to have some of it once a day. Everything that used to be a root, you should grind it up and make a tea at least once a day. Anything that used to be the bark on the outside of the tree, munch on that a little bit. It's good for the gums and the, I don't know, Eat moderately of the best foods, option three. Totally abstain from anything that has been proven to harm the body. Eat healthy, exercise healthy, and by all means, on Friday night, eat a piece of chocolate with your family after you've started the Sabbath. Even Jesus would have loved a block of chocolate, I'm sure of it. But stay in the middle of the path. Matthew 7:13 says, enter by the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is easy that leads to destruction. And those who enter by it are many. For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life. And those who find it are few. It is such a pity that more people can't travel the straight and narrow without becoming straight-laced, narrow-minded, that they so often become outrightly fanatical. A Christian who goes off on a tangent has left the way of life. A fanatic that sticks to his guns even when they are not loaded. These one-idea people that we find, these theme people, have forgotten the theme of Jesus Christ in their lives. There's nothing balanced about them anymore. These people go on and on and on about the weirdest of things. One idea men and women who have found one favorite theme. They concentrate on it until they have reached an unbalanced mind. Spirit of Prophecy says this about them. It says, they are like machinery in which only one set of wheels work at a time. While some wheels are rusting from inaction, others are wearing from constant use, says Ellen White. We are living in the last days. I firmly believe it, and I believe it is time for God's true people to be concerned about the road that we're on, where we are on that road as we take it. And the roadmap is the Bible, and it gives us very clear directions on how to travel down the sweet, narrow path that keeps us in the middle. Are you on the road that leads to life? Is your road the straight and narrow path? Or have you kind of wandered off to the side just a little bit? I remember when I was in high school, I was introduced to some silly game called bowling. Now, I've since grown to like it a little bit more after somebody showed me what to do. You know, I've got to go on every once in a while. I have bowled a 300 just once in my life, but that was fluke, I think. But I remember the thought that hit me as we went bowling is that every time that I would go up, I would throw the ball right down the middle. Because obviously, my math told me if I hit the pin in the middle, this one's going to top, pyramid effect, it's going to go down. But without fail, I tried to mimic everybody else and get this whole thing going, and I would put a spin on that ball, and no matter how many times I started in the middle, my ball ended up hitting the gutter and rolling down the side. And I really wondered if it wouldn't be better for me to just rent the gutter instead of paying for the whole alley, because it would save me money, and in fact, I would be a success at something. No matter how I tried, you've got to stay down the middle. Joshua 1 verse 7, God has just given his law to his people, and he says this: only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do according to all the law that Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. We wonder why things are going wrong in our lives. But are we keeping to God's law, or are we interpreting it so that it is comfortable for us? Well, I'm sure God of love will understand that I don't keep the Sabbath exactly this way because I've done this and that for him. And God says, do this. Do this. Again, I like to draw relationships comparisons here. But if your wife says, can you please vacuum the house for Sabbath? And I go upstairs and I dust the coffee table. How happy is she going to be with me? When all the cardboard pieces that the cat was scratching out are still all over the living room floor. Every little piece of paper that Lauren cut pieces of the puzzle out is still on the floor. Empty cans all over the place, socks and shoes everywhere, and guests come over. But at least I have dusted the coffee table. But yet God says, I want you to do this. And we say, well, this would be better for me. This would be more convenient for me. And then we wonder why we are not being blessed the way we want to. It's because we're trying to take shortcuts with God. God says, do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. If you are struggling, you've got to ask yourself, how much of what God has told me to do have I done? The book of the law, verse 8 continues, shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. The Bible and God's laws is the key to good success. Last day people are living a teeter-totter life, with its ups and downs. And God is saying, if you want to be successful, you must be a balanced Christian. Do not teeter away from God's words, or you will totter into spiritual ruin. My friends, avoid extremes. You can be a workaholic, or a maltaholic. There's another one. You can be a jogaholic or a sit-aholic. There's immodesty. You can come to church with things that are just so short, so skimpy, so tight, so sheer, so gapey that nobody, well, let's just say nothing will be left to the imagination. But there's over-modesty, where you can come to church being more covered than a nun in the Vatican. Gloves, veils, covered head to toe. Either way will interrupt the worship experience. So avoid extremes and come down the middle. Extremes even in water. We were told to drink so many cups of water. Did you know that too much water will kill you? There's documented cases of people that drowned because they drank too much water trying to be healthy. Extremes in politics. I'm not going there today. There are extremes in the church. This is what I want to address. You could have celebration services where everything that can make a bang or a clank is up front here, and everybody here will be dancing and jumping off of the chairs with hands raised high, screaming hallelujah, receiving the Spirit, falling over backwards, and doing all kinds of maneuvers on the floor, while the pastor takes off his jacket and smacks people around, casting demons out of them and bringing health back to their legs. Okay, come on, I'll show you. No, okay. And ironically, after just saying something funny, you also get churches where the pastors are comedians every single service. You don't want that either. I mean, I don't mind something funny every once in a while, but if you come to church to get your laugh, there's lots of other funny things on TV. Check out Trevor Noah, he's great. But at the same time, our churches can become funeral parlors, where we come into church and we feel like we're about to say goodbye to somebody instead of coming to the creator and the sustainer of life in this universe. When we sing songs that make you miss people you don't even know. We can focus just on last day warnings. Heaven will be filled with balanced people, not just fanatics. Ellen White continues, and she says in Gospel Workers, page 316, as the end draws near, the enemy will work with all his power to bring in fanaticism amongst us. It is so easy to get out of balance. Have you ever driven down the road with a car that has one wheel out of balance? Thousands of dollars are spent every day by people trying to get their tires balanced because they don't like driving down the road with their teeth shattering against each other because of a 3-ounce piece of lead missing from their tires. You don't want the slightest little thing to put you off of balance because it will ruin your day, but spiritually it could ruin your life. Let us keep in balance. Give your heart to Jesus. Stay in his heart. The further out on the limb you go, the easier it is to get shaken out. But heed the warning. 1 Timothy 4:1. Now the Spirit expressly says that in the later times some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons. If you deviate from the central teaching of Jesus, you will soon be following fanatical teachings of the devil himself. Some religions tend to produce fanatics. When we look at the situation we find ourselves in today due to our national security issues, is because of religions that have extremist or fanatical views that took action on this country. Muslims conquered Egypt, and in going through the remains, they discovered the great Alexandrian library with 700,000 volumes. And the Omar at the time said, either these books conform to Islam and the Quran, or they do not. If they do, they are not needed because we only need the Quran. If they do not, They are positively a distraction to what we believe. Therefore, they need to be destroyed. And with their fanatical views, they destroyed 700,000 volumes that could never be replaced. Invaluable. But because of a fanatical viewpoint, they destroyed all of history that was recorded in that library. Preachers need to be balanced. That's why I need you to pray for me more than you pray for anybody else. I'm selfish. But we need it. Jeremiah 3:15 says, "And I will give you shepherds after my own heart who will feed you with knowledge and understanding." I pray to God that I could be that. But therefore, I need to make sure that I'm in the middle of the path. I need to make sure that I'm following those commandments. You don't need a social gospel. You don't need me to stand up here and give you a $100,000 smile and just tell you that Jesus loves you and it's going to be okay. Pastors need to preach Jesus in his full beauty and balance with true knowledge and understanding. We must not drift from the centrality of Jesus Christ. It would be nice to have a sign up here maybe that I could see, that every time I preach, I could read it, that says that we would see Jesus. That is our focus, and that is what drives what is said from this pulpit. We need to preach Jesus Christ. And so today I want to make a commitment. These are my personal goals. That Christ be within me. That Christ will shine through me. That Christ will be in the front, that he will be in the rear, that Christ will be within me, below me, and above me. Christ at my right hand and on my left side. That I may be in the heart of my Savior. In my home, in my car, wherever I find myself, that I will be so close to him that I will be in his heart. Christ in the heart of every member who longs to be in heaven is my wish for you. Christ in the mouth of every person who can speak. Christ in every eye that sees. Christ in every ear that hears. Christ in everything. Christ as the center of every sermon and every activity. Jesus in his beautiful balanced truth must be the goal of our lives. The route that will take you all the way to heaven is exceedingly straight, yet narrow. Go to the left and you are lost. Veer to the right and heaven is no longer your destination. We need unswerving Christians who stick to the center of the path of life like magnetic needle to the compass clings to the pole. The path is laid out by Jesus. Follow closely in his steps. Steps made by wounded feet. They will lead you to life everlasting. That is the way forward. Amen.